Part 8. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 73. Lao Yu is going out to exercise. Exercise is nothing. When did you see him getting up early to exercise? Maybe it was to meet his girlfriend. How is that possible? His girlfriend is not in our school. You guys are just too busy to worry about it. It doesn't matter whether he goes to exercise or to meet his girlfriend. If you have that time, you might as well sleep a little longer. As he spoke, he suddenly pulled off the quilt and covered his head, intending to go back to sleep again. Forget it. Forget it. Sleep. Sleep. After saying that, everyone stopped talking, obviously planning to go back to sleep. At this time, Yu Zhizhen had already arrived at the playground. I said Ale, why did you return the whole thermos cup? Don't you always drink mineral water? Could it be? Are you vain? Looking at Ale holding a thermos cup, Yu Zhizhen couldn't help but express curiosity. Hearing Yu Zhizhen's teasing, Ale didn't take it seriously at all. He opened the thermos cup naturally, took a calm sip, and then said calmly. Void, it's not that big, it's just. Didn't Uncle Yuan say that? You can take some tonics to speed up the recovery of your energy and spirit and increase the speed of your practice. Well, just some ginseng, xiaowu, and the like. Although they don't taste very good, they are indeed quite effective. At least when I was practicing last night, I was able to move more of the heavens than when I was at Uncle Yuan's place. How? Didn't you take any supplements? In fact, it's okay to make tea like I do. At the end, Zhao Li looked at Yu Zhizhen strangely. Me. Yu Zhizhen slapped his forehead. How could he forget this matter, but it's not too late now. And he was a genius. Thinking of this, the corners of Yu Zhizhen's lips couldn't help but curl up. Ahem, Ali. How did you feel during yesterday's practice? Yu Zhizhen asked in a normal manner, but the corners of his mouth couldn't help but twitch slightly. Yesterday's practice was pretty good. When it came to yesterday's practice, Zhao Li also regained his energy and forced himself to speak in a normal tone. However, Yu Zhizhen always felt weird. And he. Seeing Zhao Li's betrayal, Yu Zhizhen couldn't help but feel an ominous feeling in his heart, and couldn't help but said cautiously, has the Yuan power in your body transformed? Has it become more pure? The energy in your body has also transformed. Seeing Yu Zhizhen's appearance, Zhao Li also felt an ominous feeling in his heart. He looked at Yu Zhizhen in slight shock and asked cautiously. Well? Hey. The two looked at each other, both slightly embarrassed. They obviously wanted to show off to each other, but they didn't expect that the other party's Yuan power had also undergone the same transformation. This is a bit embarrassing. Yu Zhizhen smiled and looked at the sky, as if he could see the stars and the moon shining all over the sky at this early dawn. Zhao Li opened the thermos cup and took a sip unhurriedly, as if nothing happened. Anyway, it's just a matter of daylight, no one can see the change in anyone's expression, even if they blush in embarrassment, who will know? Well, I'm not embarrassed anyway, it's others who are embarrassed. Well, Ali, don't you think it's very inconvenient to practice in the school dormitory? After a little relief from the embarrassment in his heart, Yu Zhizhen changed the topic. It's really inconvenient? Why? What do you think? Zhao Li was very cooperative with Yu Zhizhen's change of topic, and he was also very curious about Yu Zhizhen's plans. I'm going to buy a house near the school. Cough. Cough. Before Yu Zhizhen could finish speaking, Zhao Li just took a sip of water and spit it out violently. He coughed repeatedly and looked at Yu Zhizhen dumbfounded. Do people say it? Zhao Li also had some thoughts on the inconvenience of practicing in the dormitory. However, he planned to rent a house outside the school. When Yu Zhuzhen mentioned this, Zhao Li only thought that Yu Zhuzhen had the same plan and rented a house near the school. But unexpectedly, Yu Zhuzhen directly planned to buy a house near the school. There's no need for that. We are all about to graduate and will only live here for more than a year. Do we need to buy a house? After a while, Zhao Li just regained his breath and said with a wry smile. It seems so, but if you buy it, you just buy it. At the worst, you can rent it out. How can you still collect some rent? Yu Zhuzhen thought about it and agreed somewhat, but after pondering for a moment, he said disapprovingly. Brother, I can only say something generous. You are awesome, you are right. Zhao Li asked the sky speechlessly. After holding it in for a long time, he said helplessly. And after knowing that practicing outside the small world can actually purify one's own Yuan power, Yu Zhuzhen and the others will naturally not hide it. Instead, he naturally told the three Anyan girls, who had not practiced yet, to let them practice in reality and purify the energy in their bodies. Time flies like water, and more than 3 months have passed in the blink of an eye. In the past 3 months, Yuan Meng's understanding and analysis of the principles of Tao and Dharma between the small world and the earth have once again greatly improved, and he has gradually approached the edge of transformation again. However, after all, they are just 2 small worlds, and there are only those principles and laws in them. When Yuan Meng fully comprehends the scattered and superficial fragments of laws, it is getting more and more difficult to understand deeply and analyze other different principles, and gradually reaches a bottleneck. Up to now, Yuan Meng has not made much progress for many days. But Yuan Meng is not in a hurry, it has only been 3 months. Before, he spent several years meditating and condensing the illusory world of chaos. Moreover, Yuan Meng had already expected that the improvement would be getting slower and slower. Isn't this how cultivation should be? The further you go, the more difficult it will become. What's more, although he can only comprehend and analyze some of the derivation of rules between heaven and earth, he is still the kind of scattered and superficial Taoism and legal principles. But after all, it is the natural law between heaven and earth, and it is not so easy to understand and analyze. Therefore, Yuan Meng was not anxious at all. As time went on, he could always comprehend and analyze enough principles. At that time, the prehistoric world will transform again, and it will naturally be possible to go deeper into the core of the small world and comprehend more profound principles until it is sorted out and integrated into complete rules of the world. As for going out for a walk and looking for other small worlds, Yuan Meng would never go out before he was unable to resist the suppression and blockade of Blue Star World. In the small world, Yuan Meng not only has various magical powers, but although he is still unable to resist the bombardment of artillery shells, ordinary firearms will not pose much of a threat to him. What's more, Yuan Meng can also mobilize the power of Xiao Shandi. Taken together, even ordinary small artillery shells can no longer cause any fatal damage to it. But after leaving the little world, they were under the suppression and blockade of the Blue Star Big World. When various methods failed, even an ordinary dagger might kill Yuan Meng. How could he easily get out of the small world? Well, this is not cowardice, this is stability. The journey of creation from fantasy to reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 74. Chapter 74. Do not do it or you will die. While Yuan Meng was practicing hard, comprehending and analyzing the principles of the world, Yu Zhuzhen, Zhao Li, and others were making rapid progress in their practice. Except for Yu Zhuzhen, the second-generation rich man, Zhao Li, and others were not from wealthy families, but they were also blessed. In the short term, they could still support themselves by buying some supplements and tonics. As for whether their family supports them, they definitely do not. After all, no one would believe the practice of cultivation techniques. Even if Yujukan and others wanted to teach them, it would be impossible to succeed in the real world. As for seeking confirmation from Yuan Meng, if suddenly your child came back and told you that he could practice Taoism in someone's house, would you go to verify it? Not giving him a meal of bamboo shoots and fried pork would be a great favor. However, although his family does not support him, he can still buy some ordinary tonics with his usual pocket money. Of course, the most important thing is that Yujukan always shares some of the extra he buys and cooks with everyone. And Yanran, Yujukan's girlfriend, is fine with this. Although Zhao Li and others didn't say anything, as if they were just eating with friends, in fact, they kept it in mind. It is precisely because of these tonics that everyone can maintain a relatively long and intensive practice, which can not only attract more spiritual energy from heaven and earth. Moreover, the gathering of essence, energy, and spirit, after being integrated into the vital energy in the body, will also cause the vital energy particles to continuously split and replicate, and more vital energy can be born. This makes Yujukan and others, 3 months later, have made great achievements in practice today. Not to mention how many realms they have broken through, but at least they have practiced the current realm to a degree close to perfection. Second brother. Second brother. And just after school that day, Yujukan just walked out of the classroom and was stopped by his roommate. If you keep yelling like that, I'll get mad at you. Seeing the girl in front of him turn her head to look at him, Yujukan couldn't help but swear and glared at the 3 animals behind him. He. This is a normal greeting. Look at you, you have a dirty mind. The 3 roommates behind Yujukan didn't care at all, but laughed and teased. If you have something to say, fart. Looking at the front, the girl who had just turned back because of the movement behind her was looking at them with strange eyes. Yujukan's face turned black and he said unhappily. Hey. It's nothing, are you free tonight? What? You want to treat me to dinner? Dinner is easy, but not today. Tisk. I knew it, tell me, what's the matter? Looking at the 3 people in front of him who were looking at him with a flattering face, Yujukan pouted and said with a little curiosity. Normally, these 3 animals don't act like this. You know the old laboratory building that is still sealed. Well, what are you going to do? Hearing about the sealed old laboratory building, Yujukan's brows immediately frowned, and he looked at the 3 people with some vigilance. After experiencing the Qingping Mountain incident, he is now very sensitive to such supernatural events. He didn't know if there was anything supernatural in the old laboratory building. However, whether there was or not, he never thought about contacting it, and even walked around it intentionally or unintentionally when going to school, after school, and during activities. At this time, hearing the 3 people in the dormitory mention the old laboratory building, Yujukan was naturally very vigilant. It's nothing, we just made an appointment with a few girls and wanted to find a place that was exciting and scary, so didn't we think of that place? You don't know what's going on there, but you are rushing in. Are you tired of living? After hearing this, Yujukan's face immediately changed, and he looked at the 3 people in disbelief. You don't have to be so desperate to pick up girls, right? What era is this? Do you still believe these things? It's just a murder case. What's the matter? Have you heard of not asking for death? How can this be a death? It's just to scare those girls. They may not dare to enter. Then are you going or not? Seeing Yujukan's fussing and saying that they were asking for death, the 3 of them were a little unhappy and their tone was a little impatient. Definitely not going. I advise you not to go. There are many places to find excitement. Why go to such a place? Besides, what else can you say? What era is this? No matter what era it is, you should always have the reverence you deserve. If you are so fearless, why do you call me? Although the three of them seemed a little impatient, they were classmates and roommates after all, so Yujukin still patiently advised. Seeing that Yujukin was not going, he would have given a long speech instead. The last part of the sentence meant that they were not really fearless, which made Yujukin's three roommates look very unhappy. Although they did not believe that there were any supernatural or weird things in this world. However, they were a little scared, so they wanted to invite Yujukin, even Yujukin's girlfriend and Zhao Eli, to give them more courage. But they didn't expect that they would be taught a lesson by Yujukin, which made them feel ashamed. After all, they were all young people, and they always had some inexplicable self-esteem and pride in their hearts. Being preached by Yujukin like this, they were naturally very unhappy. Moreover, although their relationship was closer than that of other classmates, they were just roommates in the same dormitory, and they were not really such close friends. Naturally, Yujukin's tone and attitude would make the three of them very unhappy. Humph. Forget about not daring to go. We really don't believe that there will be any supernatural things that cannot be explained by science in this materialistic scientific world. We really have to go and see. Let's go. After saying that, he turned around and left with the other two. Inspired by Yujukin's words, his three roommates made up their minds to go to the old laboratory building. Hey! Yujukin stretched out his hand behind him, wanting to say something, but he didn't say it in the end. He could only helplessly watch his three roommates walk away and disappear around the corner. Shaking his head helplessly, Yujukin gathered his mood and walked towards the rental house outside the school. Well, he didn't really buy a house after all. His always gentle girlfriend Yan Ran, this time, severely stopped and strongly suppressed his idea of buying a house. In desperation, he could only suppress the urge in his heart and rented a two-story duplex, letting Zhao Eli and others move there temporarily. For this, Zhao Eli and others did not refute. When the relationship is really close to a certain extent, some things are better to remember in mind, and there is really no need to care too much. Of course, that's just some things, some principled things, still need to be adhered to. Thanks to the book friend DNDLE for the 1500 reward. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 75. When Yujukin returned to the rental house off campus, he told Zhao Eli and Yan Ran and others about the matter, which made everyone criticize his three roommates. This is a matter of mutual consent. Even if Yujukin doesn't want to go, there's no need for you to look down on others. Ah Cheng, you are also doing it for their own good. Even if what you say is not pleasant to the ears, they shouldn't be like this. And Yan Ran's pretty face was filled with frost and she said with some dissatisfaction. I'm not telling you, Ah Cheng, you don't need to say those words, just go to hell with them. And Zhao Eli said even more unceremoniously. After all, they are my roommates, and they have been together for a long time. They usually get along pretty well. Seeing as they are going to enter that dangerous laboratory building, I must try to persuade them. Yujukin said with a wry smile. Hey, it's a pity that people don't appreciate it. Let me tell you, if you don't want to go, then you won't go. Why are you talking so much? It's just that it's good. Just wait. If it's just an ordinary murder in the old laboratory building and it's not a supernatural incident, let's see how they come out to harm you. Tang Yuping, who was sitting side by side with Zhao Eli, said with a playful smile, apparently disapproving of Yujukin's meddling. Okay, I won't care about it next time. In the face of everyone's unison, Yujukin could only make repeated promises, clasped his hands together, and begged everyone for mercy. In fact, everyone knows that Yujukin's three roommates have only never experienced supernatural events, and that's why they behave like this. If they were like them, after experiencing supernatural events, they would probably not think about running to these places, but would run as far as possible. Just like they never believed in these things before, didn't everyone just think that what happened in the old laboratory building was a murder? It was Yu Zhichen and Zhao Li who said that the place might be haunted. But in fact, I still have some disapproval in my heart. Deep down, I don't think that ghosts really exist in the real world. If his 3 roommates had invited him back then, he would have gone, just now. He really wanted to be as far away from these things as he could hide. But, no matter how many reasons his roommate had, Yu Zhichen was Zhao Li's friend, so the target of condemnation was naturally his roommate. However, after all, it was just a small matter. After everyone talked about it, they put it down and turned to other places. After another round of chatting and exchanging ideas on their own practice, they dispersed and returned to their respective rooms to practice and rest. And just when Yu Zhichen finished his practice and was about to go to bed to rest, his cell phone that was placed on the table and being charged suddenly rang. Who is it? Yu Zhichen frowned slightly and walked towards the phone. It was almost 12 o'clock now. Who would call him at this time? Boss Zhang. Yu Zhichen picked up the phone and saw the name of the caller displayed on it. He couldn't help but be even more surprised, and at the same time a bad feeling came into his heart. Achan, help me. When the phone was connected, the voice coming from inside made Yu Zhichen's uneasy feeling even stronger. What's wrong with you? Did you really go to the old laboratory building? Yu Zhichen frowned, endured the uneasiness in his heart, and said quickly. Yes. There is a ghost here. Can you think of a way to save us? A series of suppressed voices came from the phone. Even Boss Zhang, who usually prided himself on being bold, was faintly crying at this time, and he was obviously extremely frightened. What can I do? I told you not to go, but you didn't listen. Now if something happens, what's the use of looking for me? Yu Zhichen was a little angry. These 3 people really didn't know how to write the word death. They would go anywhere just to pick up girls. What's the point of calling me? Call the police. Call the police. The government has sent people to deal with the matter in the old laboratory building. They must be very clear about it and have a solution. Yu Zhichen was a little angry. What was this Boss Zhang thinking? Instead of calling the police, he called him. Do you really think he is some kind of ghost hunter? However, he couldn't care about that at this time and could only force himself to speak in a suppressed voice. Report it? It's just that the police said, let us hold on, they are sending people here. Coco. When will they arrive? I see you are so stopping us from coming here, do you know something? Is there any way to save us? At this time, Zhang Wuxiao was really about to cry. He held the phone tremblingly, hid in the corner of a room with a girl, and looked out of the experimental classroom with trepidation. What can I do? The school and the country have blocked it? It must be more than just an ordinary murder case. Otherwise, since everything has been clearly investigated, why would it be blocked? Moreover, with such a big lock hanging, how did you get in? Yu Zhichen hated him to death and was extremely confused. Well, this. When mentioning this matter, Zhang Wei couldn't help but smile with a hint of embarrassment, and even his fear was reduced a bit. I'll go. It's already here, and you still want to hide it? Yu Zhichen couldn't help but feel a little angry. No, I just learned from a master before. Not to mention, his skills are simply amazing. No matter how complicated and difficult the lock is, he can easily open it. At the end of the sentence, Zhang Wuxiao actually felt a little proud. What? You are quite glorious, so just stay well with your glorious achievements. Yu Zhichen was so angry that he hung up the phone. After taking several deep breaths, Yu Zhichen suppressed the anger in his heart. He had heard of people seeking death, but he had never heard of someone seeking death like this. He actually relied on the lockpicking skills he had learned to seek death and entered the ghost building. However, even though he thought so and hung up Zhang Wuxiao's call directly, Yu Zhichen's thoughts were still racing in his heart and he didn't know whether he should take a trip. It stands to reason that if Zhang Wuxiao and the others seek death themselves, it would be quite unpleasant for them to have trouble with him. Both emotionally and rationally, he had reasons not to care about them. However, after all, they have been my classmates for 3 years, and they have been my roommates for 3 years, and they usually get along pretty well. Besides, he who doesn't know is not guilty, and he shouldn't be too fussy about it. Even before it was me, didn't I not believe these things at all? Now that I have the ability, I should help if I can. Yu Zhichen walked around the bedroom, looking at the phone call again, his eyebrows almost knitted together. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 76. Finally, Yu Zhichen gritted his teeth and decided to go. Feeling the surging Yuanli in his body, he pondered secretly that even if he couldn't completely solve the problem and couldn't save them, but it shouldn't be a problem for him to escape. Having made up his mind, Yu Zhichen immediately answered the phone. Brother. Brother, brother. I call you brother, you can't ignore me. As soon as the phone was connected, Zhang Wuxiao came from the other side of the phone, with an anxious voice that was deliberately suppressed and almost crying. Humph. Now you know to call me brother, what were you doing before? Yes, yes, yes. It's all my fault. If I can get out, I will definitely hold a banquet to apologize. Humph. There's no need to hold a banquet. You should find a safe place to hide now and try to reduce the noise. I will come as soon as possible. As for... That's it for now. Okay, I'm hanging up. Yu Zhichen told Zhang Wuxiao to find a hidden place to hide, while quickly putting on his clothes and walking out the door. Ah! After hanging up the phone, Yu Zhichen couldn't help but sigh secretly. As for what? As for his failure to arrive, Zhang Wei could only hope for the best. Where are you going? He. Yu Zhichen, who was quietly walking out, suddenly paused, turned his head slightly stiffly, looked at An Ran with a bad face behind him, and smiled awkwardly. What? Do you really want to go to that haunted building with your roommates? No way. Oh, really? Are you going out now to talk to the ghost girl about life and ideals? We can't just watch them die without helping them. Besides, I feel that with our current strength, we should be able to deal with the things we encountered before, at least escaping is always no problem. Yu Zhichen couldn't say anything else, he could only laugh awkwardly and say what he thought in his heart. Humph. And Yan Ran snorted coldly, with a cold face, and walked towards the door. What are you doing? Yu Zhichen frowned slightly and asked cautiously. Humph. What else can we do? Of course we went together. Are you going to let me watch you go to that dangerous place alone? And Yan Ran rolled her eyes at Yu Zhichen, and said very naturally. That won't do. This is my own business. How can I let you take risks? Hearing An Yan Ran's answer as expected, Yu Zhichen raised his voice slightly and refuted decisively. Why not? You sound like you are much better than me. And Yan Ran rolled her eyes at Yu Zhichen again and said very dissatisfiedly. Yu Zhichen really couldn't refute An Yan Ran's words, because this was the fact. Even because of An Yan Ran's skills, the power it contains is the largest among the 5 people, and no one can compare with it. Let's go. Do you want to wake them all up? Let's not involve them in our own affairs and drag them into danger. Oh. Okay. Although Yujukan was reluctant to let Anyan take risks, he could only nod helplessly and walk 2 steps quickly to catch up. The two of them together are always safer than Anyan quietly following. And just after Yujukan and the others closed the door and left, the other bedrooms were opened almost at the same time. They looked at each other and smiled at each other, and everything was self-evident. After arriving at the school, Yujukan and the others found a hidden corner and quickly crossed the school wall. After all, they have been practicing for a long time. Although they can't help everyone break the physical limit, they haven't given birth to any extraordinary power. But combing everyone's body and making everyone healthier and stronger is still no problem at all. Even for Anyan, who seemed weak, climbing an ordinary courtyard wall was not a big problem. In the quiet late night, walking on the tree-lined path in the campus, a cloud occasionally floated by, and the vision quickly darkened. Even though they were already considered to have cultivated, Yujukan and Anyan still felt a burst of creepiness. If it were in the past, it would not be so. However, after knowing clearly that there are indeed ghosts in the current world, they naturally became more suspicious when walking at night. In particular, they originally knew that the place they were going to this time did have evil spirits, so they were naturally more nervous. Any slight movement would make the two nervous. However, the two had already arrived at the school, so they would not retreat easily. After a period of heart-pounding, but no accidents, Yujukan and the others finally arrived at the experimental building. Gudong. Looking at the dark experimental building with its door already open, Yujukan and the other man swallowed their saliva. After looking at each other and encouraging each other, Yujukan and the other man gritted their teeth and walked into the dark and gloomy door of the experimental building. It's worthy of being a place where evil spirits live, with a cold and gloomy atmosphere. Yujukan shuddered slightly and said involuntarily. Are you sure this is not a normal phenomenon? It seems that almost every time you enter the corridor of a building like this, you will feel a cool feeling? Anyan asked with confusion on her face. She was very suspicious of Yujukan's words. She would also have this cool feeling when entering the corridors of other buildings. Well. Haha, maybe. Yujukan smiled awkwardly and said ambiguously. Walking on the quiet stairs, listening to the echoes of footsteps coming from all around, Yujukan and the others only felt a numbness in their scalps, but they could only bite the bullet and search for Zhang Wuxiao and others in the laboratory building. On the first and second floors, the two of them found nothing. There was no sign of Li Gui, nor could they find Zhang Wuxiao and others. Cheng, do you think they have never been here before and deliberately called you to lie to you? Seeing that her search was fruitless, Anyan couldn't help but quietly ask Yujukan beside her. This shouldn't be possible. Let's look upstairs again. If they are really lying to me, I will never forgive them. Yujukan said slightly hesitantly. To be honest, Yujukan didn't think Zhang Wuxiao was lying to him. When Zhang Wuxiao was on the phone, he sounded like he was about to cry. Yujukan could hear the urgency through the phone, but it really didn't sound like a lie. If this is the case, then Zhang Wuxiao's acting skills are already comparable to those of powerful actors. While talking, the two of them had already cautiously reached the third floor. And the moment they entered the third floor, the two of them seemed to have entered another world. A feeling of coldness and fear rose from the depths of their hearts. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 77. Hiss. Yujukan and Anyan couldn't help but shivered cleverly, and the hairs all over their bodies stood up. This cold feeling is completely different from the feeling of suddenly entering a shady and cold place. This is a kind of coldness that comes from the depths of the heart, accompanied by waves of horror and fear, which constantly hit my heart. Instinctively, the vitality in the two people's bodies began to circulate spontaneously, and a warmth emanated, gradually dispelling the coldness coming from deep within, and soothing the horror and fear in their hearts. This is. Yu Zhichen and the two looked at each other, and both saw shock in each other's eyes. The two of them are not stupid. How could they not notice such an obvious change? This is the existence of a real ghost. However, at this time, the two of them were not as afraid as before. Because when that bone-chilling chill, horror, and terror enveloped their hearts, the vitality in the two people's bodies also became extremely active at the same time, far exceeding that of the outside world. Yu Zhichen couldn't help but murmured in a low voice, "So here, there is also a small independent world with relatively loose rules like Uncle Yuan's place. Is this the reason why the evil ghost came into being?" At this time, Yu Zhichen and the other two looked thoughtful. It seems that this evil ghost must be born in this small world with relatively loose rules. The big world outside the small world will not only greatly suppress the practice of their practitioners, but also weird evil objects such as these ghosts and ghosts will definitely be greatly suppressed, and may even be unable to be born. However, at this time, Yu Zhichen and Xuanhuan just looked at each other and turned their attention to the outside world, guarding against the possible attack from the ghost at any time. This was not the time for them to think about other things. And as their spirits became more concentrated, the vitality in their bodies began to circulate faster and faster. Gradually, the bodies of the two of them began to glow with gleaming light. This is. At the first moment, the two noticed something strange about each other, and a touch of shock and joy flashed in their eyes. Yu Zhichen couldn't help but raise his right hand and began to gather the vitality in his body. When he first started practicing, he couldn't help but get hit twice, and his hand almost became swollen. At this time, he could be considered successful in his practice, and even more so, he had already shown his miraculous powers. How could he not make the slightest attempt? As he moved, as the vitality in his body circulated, strands of crystal brilliance began to emerge and gather in his palm, gradually turning into a crystal ball of light, exuding gleaming light. Within the ball of light, one could vaguely see a looming dragon shadow, circling in it. Looking at the light ball in his hand, the corners of Yu Zhichen's mouth couldn't help but crack slightly, and the excitement in his heart was beyond words. And Xuanhuan on the side also showed a heartfelt excited smile. However, like Yu Zhichen, Xuanhuan is more calm. She knew clearly that now was not the time for them to relax, so she whispered a reminder to Yu Zhichen. "Ah Cheng, be careful. Don't waste your energy. We still don't know what will happen later." "I know. I know." After hearing what Xuanhuan said, Yu Zhichen also looked solemn and nodded in response. In a flash of thought, the crystal ball of light in his hand suddenly dissipated and disappeared into his palm again. But despite this, the excited smile on Yu Zhichen's face never disappeared. After regaining their composure, Yu Zhichen and the others searched the third floor again, shouting softly at the same time. When the two of them walked to a laboratory, they suddenly paused slightly, looked at each other, and then pushed the door open as if nothing had happened. After the two entered, the classroom door of the laboratory behind them suddenly made a harsh creak sound and slowly closed. Humph! The mighty Tianlong. At this moment, Yu Zhichen suddenly turned around, and the energy in his body flowed, instantly converging on his palms, and suddenly shot in the direction of the classroom door. And this time, although it still seems a bit mediocre, if coupled with the strange phenomena caused by its attack, it really has some power from Fa Hai. Ang. A vague sound of dragon roar sounded, and a crystal clear and illusory dragon suddenly sprang out from his palm, shaking its head and tail, and rushed towards the classroom door. Bang! There was nothing there, but the crystal clear and illusory dragon seemed to have hit a solid object. It made a dull sound and exploded, turning into a sky filled with light. Ah! The next moment, a shrill scream rang out at the door of the experimental classroom. A looming blood-red figure flashed past the classroom door. "The sea is boundless." And Xuanhuan let out a sweet shout, and a circle of faint blue ripples spread from her body to all directions, covering a distance of 10 meters. At the edge of the blue ripples, a red figure suddenly appeared, but after a slight pause, it flashed away. Pity. And Yanran shook her head and sighed. After all, she had never experienced a battle in person. After all, her reaction was half a beat too slow and she did not confine the blood-red figure within her domain. Moreover, Yanran's blue field is not a real field. It just relies on the energy characteristics to spread and cover the surrounding area. She can form a body full of UN power, and can manipulate the UN power within this range according to her wishes to interfere and imprison others. Of course, although it cannot be like a real domain, it can evolve a small world of its own domain with its own control rules as the core. However, when she was at a low level, Yanran's boundless move was also an excellent control skill. However, due to the suppression of the outside world, she had only imagined how to use this kind of UN power. However, I have never conducted a real practice in this small world with loose rules. Therefore, whether it was reaction or actual operation, it had to be more jerky and slow. That was why he did not complete the cooperation with Yu Jujhen and imprison the blood-red figure. It doesn't matter. He is in this small world anyway. You can always encounter him again. It won't be too late to leave him completely and kill him when the time comes. Yu Jujhen comforted Yanran and walked out of the classroom first. You don't need to look to know that the two people made such a big noise, but there was no sound at all in this experimental classroom. There must be no one else present. Yanran also gathered her mood, followed closely behind Yu Jujhen, and walked out of the experimental classroom. At this time, the fear in the two people's hearts had almost completely disappeared. What humans fear most is the invisible unknown hidden in the dark. And when humans see things as they really are and are able to cause harm to them, most of this invisible fear will naturally dissipate. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 78. Boss Zhang. Boss Zhang. Where are you? We are here to find you. At this time, Yu Jujhen and the other two were no longer as cautious as before when walking. Instead, they were searching while whispering the names of Zhang Wuxiao and others. Well, even if you don't have to be careful, you can't make it public. However, although the movements made by Yu Jujhen and the two of them were not too small, they shouted for a long time, but there was no response at all. This is wrong. If we shout so loudly, even if they are not on this floor, they should have heard it. Why is there no movement at all? And Yanran pulled Yu Jujhen and said with a slight frown. Is this possible? Yu Jujhen stopped, with an ugly look on his face, and said hesitantly. This. And Yanran also had a look of embarrassment on her face. Under such circumstances, the two of them had to think of the worst. She didn't have any good ideas for this, so she could only suggest to Yu Jujhen after a brief meditation. Don't you have his phone number? Why don't you give him a call? Crack. Oh. I'm so stupid, why didn't I think of calling? Yu Jujhen slapped his forehead and said regretfully. After all, this is different from Buzhu Mountain, a small world that is semi-isolated from the outside world. Just like the East China Sea small world, this is a similar small world, although the rules are relatively active. But it is not isolated from the outside world. Whether it is the air circulation or electronic signals between each other, they can actually communicate with each other. Afterwards, Yu Jujhen hurriedly took out his mobile phone from his pocket, found Zhang Wuxiao's number, and dialed it quickly. Do. Hello. Not long after the phone rang, someone answered the call, and a muffled voice came from inside. Although the voice was deliberately lowered, it even contained the slightest trembling. But Yu Zhichen also heard it right away. This was Zhang Wuxiao's voice. "Boss Zhang, we have arrived, where are you?" "Here, there, there. We are in classroom 304 on the third floor of the laboratory building." Yu Zhichen and Yanran looked at each other, their expressions changed, they turned around suddenly and ran towards the way they came. Bang! With a loud noise, Yu Zhichen kicked open the classroom door that was ajar. This experimental classroom was none other than the one where the two of them met the red-clothed ghost before. However, although they had entered this classroom, they even fought with the red-clothed ghost here. However, Yu Zhichen and the others did not find anything strange here, let alone Boss Zhang and others. He didn't pay any attention to the classroom door that was crumbling after he kicked it. The first time after Yu Zhichen entered the classroom, he quickly glanced at the entire classroom. There was nothing unusual in the classroom. The desks were neatly arranged, with some scattered experimental equipment placed on them. Due to being closed off for a long time, the desk and the experimental equipment on it were covered with a thick layer of dust. In addition, let alone Zhang Wuxiao and others, there are not even cockroaches or mice. Huh? What's going on? Yu Zhichen murmured in confusion, and then asked Zhang Wuxiao, who had not hung up the phone yet. "Boss Zhang, are you sure you are on the third floor of the laboratory building, classroom 304? After listening to Yu Zhichen's inquiry, Zhang Wuxiao immediately replied with certainty, "Of course. When I came in, I took a look at the classroom door number. It was indeed classroom 304. Ah! She is here." Listening to the extremely depressing voice that was about to cry, Yu Zhichen couldn't help but frown and glanced at the classroom again, but still found nothing. While Yu Zhichen was frowning in thought, Yanran, who was beside him, was looking at the classroom with a thoughtful expression. "Cheng, do you feel strange?" Yanran showed a strange look, and gently touched Yu Zhichen on her side with her jade hand. "Strangeness? No, isn't it normal here? There's nothing strange about it." Suddenly hearing Yanran's inquiry, Yu Zhichen couldn't help but be startled. Following Yanran's gaze, he scanned around the classroom again, but still found nothing. No. However, before he finished speaking, he suddenly made a sound of surprise, quickly walked to the table in the front row, and wiped it gently with his hand. Looking at the dust on his hands, he looked at the table and chairs in front of him with the same thoughtful expression. The vitality in his body began to slowly gather, causing his hands to glow with gleaming light. The vitality bloomed, but it did not shake away the dust on his hands. Instead, when the two touched, they made a hissing sound. And in a burst of blue smoke, it completely dissipated invisible. This is... Looking at the clean palms, Yu Zhichen would be too stupid if he didn't understand what was going on. With a bright light in his eyes, he glanced at the tables, chairs, and benches in the classroom, revealing a sneer. "I didn't notice it at first, but now I think about it carefully, this is already an abandoned experimental building, so why are these tables, chairs, benches, and experimental equipment left behind? As an abandoned and blocked laboratory building, any equipment that can be used will probably be removed. Even if there are any remnants, they will only be some broken garbage. Unlike now, although these tables, chairs, benches, and laboratory equipment are all covered with thick dust, as if they have been abandoned for a long time. However, these tables, chairs, benches, and laboratory equipment are all intact, which is obviously a bit unreasonable. Obviously, the classroom where Yu Zhichen and the others are located should be just an illusion, or an alien space, not the real world." "Heh." Yu Zhichen smiled coldly and turned to look at Yanran beside him. "Yeah." Yanran nodded slightly, understood what Yu Zhichen meant, and slowly walked forward a few steps to the center of the classroom. "Ha! The sea is boundless. The next moment, Xuanhuan burst into a delicate cry. Buzz. Instantly, Xuanhuan's delicate body shook, and the surging energy in her body surged out, turning into a light blue ripple, which instantly spread out and enveloped the entire classroom, reflecting the entire classroom in a blue color, as if they were in the sea dragon. As Xuanhuan's domain enveloped the classroom, the space of the entire classroom was slightly fluctuated for a moment, but returned to normal in an instant. However, although the classroom did not return to normal, it also confirmed that the classroom they saw now was by no means a normal environment, but should be a different dimension from reality. As for not breaking through the different dimension, neither Xuanhuan nor Yujukan was disappointed. Xuanhuan's domain was originally a control-type skill, and it could only be said to be unsatisfactory for attacking. It was normal that this different dimension space could not be broken. It can even be said that being able to cause a slight fluctuation was already beyond the expectations of the two. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 79. To be honest, in the eyes of Yujukan and the others, control skills like Xuanhuan's can only break through some illusions at most. They did not have much illusion about the real destructive power it could produce. After all, Xuanhuan had only been practicing for a short time. How could her so-called domain skills cause much interference to the existence that could open up a different dimension? However, it was precisely because of this that Yujukan and Xuanhuan were sure that the evil spirits in this small world of the experimental building should not be too powerful. Otherwise, Xuanhuan's sea domain would definitely not be able to shake this different dimension in the slightest. This made the two of them breathe a sigh of relief again, and their confidence increased a little bit. Thinking about this, Yujukan did not stop his movements. He suddenly raised his palm to his chest, and the vital energy in his body flowed and gathered in his palm, turning into a bright ball of light, with a little dragon swimming in it. After gathering this energy ball, Yujukan did not rush to shoot it out, but more energy continued to flow into it. The radiant light emitted by the energy ball became more and more brilliant as the energy continued to merge, and in the end, it even produced a slight roar. At this time, Yujukan waved his palm vigorously and pushed the energy ball in his palm out. At this time, Yujukan did not shout the name of the skill in a middle school way. The energy ball condensed by Yujukan did not explode directly after leaving Yujukan's palm, but began to emit a radiant divine light. The divine light bloomed, and after contacting the power of Xuanhuan's sea domain, it immediately resonated with it. As the azure light rippled slightly, Xuanhuan's sea domain began to interact and merge with the divine light emitted by the energy ball. Gradually, the energy ball and Xuanhuan's sea domain were completely integrated. Moreover, with Xuanhuan's sea domain as the medium, it began to produce an effect similar to the unity of heaven and man with this alien space. The Yuankai light ball, the sea domain, and this alien space actually achieved a trinity effect at this moment. The next moment. Crack. The surface of the Yuankai light ball suddenly cracked, and a brilliant divine light shone through it. Crack. Crack. Then, as if a chain reaction had occurred, accompanied by a series of cracking sounds, cracks formed on the surface of the Yuankai light ball. And every time a crack was produced, Xuanhuan's sea domain would cause a long-lasting wave. Even the changes in the Yuankai light ball were amplified by the amplification of Xuanhuan's sea domain, and directly acted on the connected alien spaces. The alien space barriers within the scope of the sea domain began to violently turbulent, with ripples and waves, becoming looming. As the cracks on the Yuankai light ball continued to appear, Xuanhuan's entire sea domain began to surge with continuous waves, layer upon layer, like surging waves. Similarly, the alien space barrier connected to it also became more and more turbulent, gradually becoming translucent. Even Yujukan and Xuanhuan were able to see the scene of another space through the looming alien space barrier. That space was also in a classroom. However, there were no neatly arranged tables, chairs, benches, and experimental equipment in that classroom. There were only some messy debris piled up in the classroom. And behind those debris, at the back of the classroom, in the innermost corner, a man and a woman were hugging each other tightly and trembling, looking at the direction of the classroom door in fear. These two people were none other than Yu Jukin's roommate Zhang Xiao and a girl Yu Jukin did not know. At the door of the classroom, a figure in scarlet blood-stained clothes was staring at them with dark eyes, slowly approaching step by step. At this moment, as if they had discovered something, both sides turned their heads and looked in the direction of An Ran and Yu Jukin. Zhang Wei just laughed at them, looking at the looming Yu Jukin and An Ran. His eyes were full of surprise and a hint of surprise. The figure in scarlet blood-stained clothes had cold, hateful murderous intent in his eyes, as well as a hint of surprise. Ang! At this moment, a clear dragon roar sounded, and the little dragon swimming in the Yuankai light ball broke the Yuankai light ball in an instant, just like breaking the dragon egg that hatched itself. Bang! Accompanied by a dull sound, the Yuankai light ball instantly shattered, turned into dots of firefly light, and merged into the surrounding sea domain. As the Yuankai light ball shattered, the sea domain and the alien space that were a trinity with it all began to fluctuate violently. A series of terrifying waves instantly spread outward in the sea domain. And in this process, this terrifying wave is still being strengthened. When it really touches the alien space, the shock force it instantly generates makes the alien space barrier tremble suddenly, and cracks begin to appear and spread rapidly on it. However, although the alien space barrier begins to break due to the power of amplification and resonance of the sea domain. However, it also has the characteristics of self-repair. When the barrier of the alien space was broken, the repair power of the alien space was also activated, and began to quickly repair and heal the cracks. However, Ang! The dragon that broke out of the shell, under the control of Yu Jukin's mind, once again let out a clear dragon roar. The slender figure, like a dragon entering the sea, meandered in An Ran sea domain. It was really like a real dragon, raising a series of surging waves. For a moment, the dragon borrowed the power of the sea, and the sea helped the dragon's power. The two complemented each other, causing the power of the dragon to start to rise at an astonishing speed. Ang! Accompanied by another dragon roar, the dragon accelerated and circled violently, and the dragon tail behind it swung out violently, leaving a series of after-images, showing its fast speed. Boom! This sudden swing of the dragon's tail hit the barrier of the alien space heavily, making a loud roar. Crack! Crack! Bang! Finally, the barrier of this other dimension could no longer hold on. With a loud bang, it turned into crystal fragments all over the sky and completely dissipated. The figures of Yu Jukin and An Ran suddenly appeared in the real classroom while Zhang Xiao and the girl were stunned. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 80. Het. Let's see where you can escape this time. Dragon flying in the four seas, go. Seeing the red-clothed figure completely covered by the sea domain, Yu Jukin shouted in an instant, commanding the dragon condensed by his vitality to swoop down in the blink of an eye. Ang! A clear dragon roar sounded, and the dragon of vitality raised many waves in the sea domain, and he himself was walking on the waves. At this moment, the entire sea domain, except for the power that imprisoned the red-clothed figure, all the rest was imposed on him. The dragon flew in the sky, and in almost an instant, it had already arrived above the red-clothed figure, and the dragon claws stretched down, and the boundless power instantly suppressed it. Well, this is for the red-clothed figure. And the red-clothed figure below, although there was no fear or panic in his eyes, his struggle was a little stronger. Finally, he was able to move his body. However, its movements were extremely slow, as if it was a centenarian, or as if it was stuck in a quagmire. With such a speed, How could it escape the rushing Yuankai dragon? Unsurprisingly, the dragon claws carrying boundless power fiercely grabbed the head of the red-clothed figure and pressed down hard. Boom! With a loud rumble that resounded in everyone's hearts, the gloomy red-clothed figure collapsed instantly and turned into a strand of energy. Well, the current Yuankai power is more about people's minds, as well as those weird and evil spirits that come from people's hearts. The real effect on reality is actually very limited. It looks extremely gorgeous, with the sea and the dragon, but more of it is a sound and light effect. Of course, because of the special nature of Yuankai, it will definitely affect people's minds and produce some seemingly true illusions. This makes the attacks of the two people so vivid, as if a real dragon has descended to the world. Who? At this time, Yujukan and Anyan both let out a long breath with pale faces. Obviously, controlling the sea domain and the Yuankai dragon is not an easy task, and it is very exhausting. After seeing that there was no more abnormality, the two of them quickly retracted the sea domain and the Yuankai dragon. After all, this is the spiritual energy refined by the two of them. Before the spiritual imprints of the two are completely erased, they can be retracted. However, when the Yuankai leaves the body, the spiritual imprint in it will be gradually erased after losing the nourishment of the main body, and then it will be out of the control of the owner and turn into the ownerless spiritual energy of heaven and earth again. Well, at least on the surface. After all, outsiders don't know that this so-called spiritual energy of heaven and earth is the condensation and embodiment of Yuan Meng's spiritual power. And when Yujukan and Anyan took back the sea domain and the Yuankai dragon, their faces immediately improved by 3 points. The vitality of the two people is originally their spirit, combined with the spiritual energy. After taking it back, it can naturally replenish the mental loss of the two people to a certain extent. Although the power taken back by the two people is less than 30% of the power released from the body, it is faster than self-recovery. At the level that Yujukan and Anyan cannot see, the spiritual particles that have escaped the control of the two are slowly spreading in this small world. And at the same time, they are constantly merging with this small world, becoming part of the power of this small world, and slowly absorbing the energy of this small world. These spiritual particles are originally the condensation and embodiment of Yuan Meng's spiritual power. In this small world with loose rules but no will of heaven and earth, it is easy to achieve the unity of heaven and man and borrow the power of heaven and earth. However, the power borrowed by these spiritual particles will be completely fused by the spiritual particles, split into new spiritual particles, and merged into heaven and earth again. For the small world, the power of this small world has not been lost at all, but the original core of it has changed into another appearance. From the original pure energy, it has turned into the spiritual energy particles that belong to Yuan Meng now. After the red-clothed figure disintegrated, the negative energy that was scattered and affected by its negative will was formed. When it was ready to gather again and manifest in the world again, the spiritual energy particles around it had already rushed forward, instantly decomposing and merging it completely, and turned it into a series of yin-attributed spiritual energy. The figure that was about to gather again completely disintegrated in an instant. However, when Yujukan, Anyan, including Zhang Xiao and the girl, thought that the gloomy red-clothed figure had been completely solved and beaten to death. Even when they had gathered together and talked to each other, a red phantom slowly emerged again. Zhang Xiao, who was facing the door of the experimental classroom, and the girl's eyes suddenly opened wide, and the smile on their faces became terrified again. Noticing the change in the two people's expressions, Yujukan and Anyan, who had already turned around, also changed their expressions. Although the two could not see the scene behind them, they knew that something must have happened. Just as the two were about to turn around, an extremely gloomy force instantly enveloped their bodies. There was also an unspeakable fear that quickly rose from the bottom of their hearts when they were covered by the gloomy force. He. Ha ha. Ha. At this moment, the two of them even seemed to be able to vaguely hear a series of sinister smiles coming from behind them, which made people's scalps explode. It even caused the two people's bodies to tense up suddenly, and even their movements became extremely stiff. What should have been an extremely quick turnaround turned around now, like a rusty machine, and became extremely difficult. You evildoer! Don't be so presumptuous! And just when the two of them had become extremely desperate and were about to close their eyes and wait for death, there was a loud shout from behind them. At the same time, ang! Boom! Click! Accompanied by a loud dragon roar, a thunderbolt resounded, and even everyone's hair stood up slightly. However, it was also the dragon's roar and the thunder that enveloped everyone, as well as the gloomy feeling that arose from the bottom of their hearts. But in an instant the ice and snow melted away and no longer existed. Aha! Yu Zhichen and Anyan turned around in an instant, their bodies lit up slightly, and they were ready to defend or attack at any time. Ale! Yuping! Yaway! Turning around, what caught the eyes of Yu Zhichen and Anyan was a figure in red that was slowly dissipating. There are also Zhao Li, Tang Yuping, Xia Yawei, and the Vitality Dragon that is being taken back by everyone. Well, Xia Yawei's is a slender Vitality Koi. Why are you here? Looking at the three people who suddenly appeared, Yu Zhichen asked in slight surprise. Hey! I asked you too, do you still think of us as friends? It's such a fun thing to do like catching ghosts, but you don't even call us friends. You really aren't friends enough. Zhao Li came closer, punched Yu Zhichen's chest lightly, and said with a dissatisfied look on his face. Well, this is my own choice, how can I drag you into such danger? Yu Zhichen said slightly embarrassed. Hey! Are we the kind of people who abandon our friends? Zhao Li rubbed his nose hard and said rather dissatisfied. Humph! If we hadn't arrived in time, you would have been in trouble this time. Tang Yuping also complained. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, brother. Sister. Thinking of their previous encounters, Yu Zhichen and Anyan couldn't help but feel palpitations. They couldn't help but clasping their hands together and thanking Zhao Lishan repeatedly. Ah! At this moment, Zhang Wuxiao, who was beside Yu Zhichen, and the girl with him, suddenly screamed out. And out of the corner of his eye, Yu Zhichen also caught a glimpse of bright red. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 81. Instinctively, the vitality in Yu Zhichen's body surged, and he suddenly slapped his palm towards the bright red that he caught a glimpse of from the corner of his eye. Tisk. Bang. Yuping. A lot of things can happen in the blink of an eye. Although Yu Zhichen's reaction was not slow, he blew up the red figure in an instant. However, the arm of the bright red figure had already brought up a red after image, which instantly passed over Tang Yuping's back. There were several deep wounds on his back, and the bright red blood instantly soaked the clothes on his back. Even if he hadn't felt the cold breath from behind at the critical moment, he would have tried his best to rush forward. This time, I am afraid it is not as simple as just leaving a wound, but cutting it into two pieces with one blow, which is also very normal. It is difficult for vitality to affect reality, but this red-clothed fierce ghost born from the human heart is still very powerful in this small world, but its physical resistance is weak. The human heart fights against the human heart, which is the fusion of essence, energy, and spirit. As long as it can hit, it can be easily killed. Yuping. Yuping. How are you? Don't scare me. Tang Yuping was holding Tang Yuping in her arms, looking at Zhao Li whose hands were already stained red with blood in just a moment, and couldn't help but feel a little at a loss. It's okay. Tang Yuping frowned slightly with a pale face, and steeled herself to comfort Zhao Li. Then he took a deep breath, and with a thought, the vitality in his body quickly circulated, and under his control, it circulated to the wound on his back. Use internal force and true energy to suppress wound bleeding and even repair injuries. Although Tang Yuping has never experienced this kind of thing, there are plots in this aspect whether on TV or in novels, so she will naturally be familiar with it. Under the current situation, she naturally thought of this. Looking at the light of vitality blooming slightly behind Tang Yuping, Zhao Li suddenly realized. He was also concerned but confused. They were not ordinary people now. Faced with this kind of thing, they could only wait for rescue or perform a rough bandage with cloth. Now, they can also use extraordinary power to recover from their injuries. Even if it doesn't work, it can still prevent the injury from getting worse. After waking up, Zhao Li quickly mobilized the vitality in his body, transferred it to his palms, and gently pressed it on Tang Yuping's injured back. Because the refined vitality has its own spiritual imprint, it naturally cannot be imported into other people's bodies. This will cause conflicts between each other's vitality. Not only will it not be able to assist in healing, but it will aggravate the injury. However, although it cannot be imported into other people's bodies, it can be assisted outside the body with vitality, which is much stronger than ordinary gauze. Coupled with Tang Yuping herself, she uses her own vitality to stimulate the muscles near the wound, causing it to shrink the wound, and even stimulate the cells to rapidly divide and reorganize. Although it cannot make the wound heal instantly, it can greatly speed up its healing speed, and it can also prevent the wound from deteriorating and bleeding in a short period of time. Well, today's spiritual energy, although in fact, does not directly strengthen or repair physical injuries. However, the vitality that is refined by someone is the combination of a person's essence, spirit, and spiritual energy. Although it cannot strengthen the body while it is in its body, but it is possible to separate one's own energy and spirit from the spiritual energy again. This kind of energy and spirit that belongs to oneself can speed up the recovery of one's own injuries, especially in this small world with relatively loose rules. The effect is even more obvious. Just like now, in just a dozen breaths, Tang Yuping's bleeding wound had stopped bleeding, but her face became paler. After all, her method of repairing injuries requires a lot of energy. Without the energy and spirit in this part of the energy, her mental state will naturally become worse and worse. While Tang Yuping was repairing her injuries, Yu Zhuzhen and Yan Ran and Xia Wei over there had already killed the figures in red who kept appearing more than 10 times in a row. However, what everyone did not play its due role at all. After the figure in red was beaten up by everyone, he would soon reunite again and recover as before without suffering any harm. Hu! Ha! Ha! The remaining 90% and 3 people only felt that it was difficult to breathe and their bodies became extremely heavy. But, looking at the figure in red that reappeared, the 3 of them looked at each other, but had to smile bitterly and regain their strength, squeeze out the last trace of vitality in their bodies, and slapped hard again. It's just that the vitality dragon that was shot this time is no more than the thickness of a thumb. As for the dragon's roar, there is no trace of it. It is said to be a divine dragon of vitality, but it is more like a small snake. And Yan Ran and Xia Wei were not much better. Xia Wei's koi has also become no more than the size of a thumb, and has even become extremely illusory and looks like it will collapse at any time. And Yan Ran, on the other hand, is stronger than the 2 of them because her technique is to continuously accumulate immeasurable vitality and win by quantity. However, the sea area it spread out has also turned into a light blue color, and it can only barely cover the red figure. It is already somewhat powerless to completely restrict it. In addition, Yan Ran's skills at this stage need to focus more on controlling power, and basically have no means of attack. Therefore, this time, they can only entangle with the red-clothed figure. It has become unrealistic to defeat it quickly. On the other side, Zhao Li saw that Tang Yuping's injuries had gradually stabilized, so he gently put her on the wall on one side of the classroom and asked the girl with Zhang Wuxiao to take care of her. Zhao Li stood up and turned around, his eyes emitting a sharp light of hatred, looking at the red-clothed figure that was constantly flashing and fighting with Yu Jukan and the other two. Come and die. Zhao Li stepped forward suddenly, and in a flash, he had come to the front of the people who were fighting, and slapped the red-clothed figure with a fierce palm. Ang! Accompanied by a flash of golden light, the vitality in Zhao Li's body surged out, turning into a golden dragon, emitting a loud dragon roar, and directly passed through the chest of the red-clothed figure. Bang! Without any surprise, the red-clothed figure exploded with a bang and turned into wisps of green smoke and dissipated. Hey! Hey! Seeing Zhao Li's actions, Yu Jukan wanted to reach out to stop him, but it was too late, and he could only watch him blow up the red-clothed figure. You shouldn't have killed her. And Yanran sighed. Well, I know. But if I don't kill her once, I will feel upset. Just now, although Zhao Li had been helping Tang Yuping heal her wounds, he was also paying attention to the battle here with Yu Jukan. Naturally, he already knew quite a bit about the situation of the red-clothed figure. It can be said to be immortal. No matter how many times it is killed or blown up, it can be reborn quickly. With their current strength, there was really nothing they could do. They could only entangle it and then find a way to escape from here. But facing the red-clothed ghost that had severely injured Tang Yuping, how could he treat it with a normal heart? He had to kill it once to relieve his anger. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 82. Let's go. Let's go. The group hurried out of the classroom and headed downstairs. What about Lao San and the others? What should we do? After hesitating for a long time, Zhang Wuxiao asked. Look at us, do we still have the ability to look for them? Yu Jukan paused and said lightly. They are all exhausted now, and Tang Yuping was seriously injured. It is completely unrealistic to search for others. He came to search for Zhang Wuxiao and the others before because he had a certain confidence that he could leave here safely, and because of the mutual affection. But if he continued to search for others and caused everyone to be trapped here, it would not be what he wanted. In fact, if he had known that everyone would end up in such a situation, and Tang Yuping was so seriously injured, Yu Jukan might not even come. He was able to take a certain risk and do his part for the sake of living in the same dormitory for several years. But this does not mean that he is willing to sacrifice his own life and the lives of his friends just to rescue his ordinary roommates. He is not so noble. Don't say he is cold and heartless. He is very kind to go to this dangerous ghost building within his ability. Seeing Yu Jukan's slightly cold expression, the others showed obvious dissatisfaction, and the female companion beside him was also secretly pulling his clothes. Ah! Zhang Wuxiao stammered for a while, and finally just sighed. How could he not know the current situation, but everyone came here quickly, and now only 2 people left, he always felt guilty. He. Suddenly, a gloomy laughter echoed in this empty laboratory building. Go. Hearing this laughter, everyone's face changed immediately. Zhang Wuxiao no longer had the intention to find other people, and Yu Jukan hurriedly shouted. At the same time, he once again raised the vitality that had just recovered, and together with Zhao Li and Yan Ran and others, he looked around vigilantly, guarding against the attacks that might come at any time. Zhang Wuxiao and the girl who supported Tang Yuping stood in the middle of the crowd, showing a look of vigilance and fear, and looked around in panic. Tang Yuping, who was seriously injured, looked pale, but did not show much fear. It must be said that strength can really change a person. Thinking back to the time when they were in the small world of Buzhu Mountain, the performance of Yu Jukan and others was not much better than that of Zhang Wuxiao and others. And now, Several people have their own strength. Even if the strength has been exhausted, facing the evil spirit that seems to be invincible, they still have the courage to fight for their lives. Shua. Just as everyone was walking forward vigilantly, a red figure suddenly flashed behind them. Swish. Ah! Accompanied by the sound of a sharp blade entering the flesh, even though he had tried his best to dodge, Yujukan, who was walking behind, was still scratched on the arm by the evil spirit, and couldn't help but scream out in pain. In an instant, blood oozes out quickly, soaking most of his sleeves. Aiken! Aiken! Seeing Yujukan injured, everyone couldn't help but scream out in surprise. And Yan Ran quickly stepped forward, her face full of worry, stretched out her little hand to cover the bleeding wound, mobilized the Yuan Li in her body, and stopped the wound from bleeding. Yujukan covered his injured arm, shook his head, and stopped Yan Ran from continuing to consume Yuan Li. Take a deep breath. Yujukan slightly mobilized the Yuan Li in his body, slightly repaired the injury, so that it would no longer bleed heavily, and also stopped wasting Yuan Li. At this time, the evil spirit may appear again at any time. It is not a good time to heal, and it is even more impossible to waste the Yuan Li in the body. It's okay, go. Yujukan endured the severe pain in his arm, groaned softly, and said quickly. Seeing that Yujukan was fine, everyone quickly moved forward again, and looked around more vigilantly. Fortunately, they were not far from the stairs, and they arrived at the stairs in just a few breaths. Looking at the dark stairs that seemed to be able to swallow everything, everyone was delighted at this time. Da-da-da. Without much hesitation, everyone began to go downstairs quickly. And in a glance from the corner of their eyes, everyone could see that at the entrance of the stairs, there was a red figure standing quietly, staring at the backs of everyone going downstairs with blood-red eyes that seemed to be able to swallow everything, which made everyone's backs cold and their hair stood on end. However, fortunately, the red figure did not seem to have the intention to pursue, which made everyone exhale a breath of turbid air. Wait a moment. After an unknown amount of time, Zhang Wuxiao and the girl with him, after all, were just ordinary people. They were already panting heavily, holding onto the railing of the stairs and gasping for breath. In fact, in addition to Zhao Eli, Yujukan, and others, who had already exhausted their energy and had not recovered much at this time, were also slightly panting and sweating. Something is wrong. Why do I feel like we have gone down many floors? Why haven't we reached the first floor yet? Xia Wei panted heavily, looking at the dark and gloomy stairs with a serious look. After hearing this, Yujukan and others' expressions also became serious in an instant. They looked at each other and instinctively raised their heads and looked upwards. And it was this point that immediately made everyone's souls tremble. Because at the top of the stairs, a blood-red figure was quietly watching them. Ah! In an instant, everyone screamed, gathered their strength again, and ran downstairs quickly. When they came to the next floor again, they did not continue, but walked in quickly. 301. Looking at the bright 301 on the classroom doorplate, everyone's pupils suddenly shrank, and there was a trace of fear in their eyes. This. Can we get out, Wu? Zhang Wuxiao and the girl with him, who saw all this, showed a look of fear and despair, and couldn't help sobbing softly. Shut up first. Zhao Eli frowned slightly and shouted impatiently. Wu. Hearing Zhao Li's scolding, Zhang Wuxiao and the others were afraid, but they also quickly shut up. The girl even covered her mouth tightly with her hands, fearing that she would make a sound and upset Yujukan and others, and be abandoned here. They are both ordinary people. If they are abandoned here by Yujukan and others, they can only wait for death in despair. Yujukan and others looked along the corridor, although it was pitch black around. However, at the end of the corridor, a bloody figure was clearly visible, and a series of faint laughter and low humming sounds were constantly heard by everyone. A sense of horror from the heart instantly spread throughout everyone's body, which made everyone's scalp numb and their hair stood up. "Let's go." After staring for a moment, Zhao Li spoke decisively. Everyone turned around again and hurried down the stairs, but from the corner of their eyes, they could still see the blood-red figure standing quietly at the stairs, watching them.